On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
The first thing I say to everyone listening is that I don't think there is one way. And I think if anyone tells you this is the way, then maybe look at them slightly cautiously, because there's no one single way.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host. Today, I've got Anthony Paine here on the King stage, my brother from the UK. How you doing?
Straight from the UK. Thanks for having me.
Right. Absolutely. We were just talking off air that it's afternoon your time, fresh morning my time, but you're saying that you actually prefer a fresh early morning wake up. But I'm catching you on the decline, right?
Yeah, I just refueled with caffeine, so I'm all good. But yeah, I'm a 5:30 riser and get, I'd say, 60% of the productivity done before midday.
There you go. I'd probably say the same. I try to stack just as much as I can until I can't anymore. And so I don't know if that's an efficiency expert thing or if that's just I'm so dumb I just pack it so full. I don't know. How do you feel about that? But we appreciate you being here. Tell us what kind of business that you have.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks to anyone who's giving this a listen. So my main business is called Stashbee. We've been doing business since about 2017. And we're an online marketplace. And we essentially allow people to rent storage and parking space from each other. So it's a platform similar to Airbnb, which I'm sure most of your listeners have heard of. Here in Europe, we've got booking.com, but we deal in storage and parking space, basically.
Yeah, that's great. And for the simplicity of it is I can take my spare space and rent it out peer-to-peer, like you had mentioned. And so you've made some pivots in that. And I'm sure working through 17 to now, even through COVID, I'm sure that's been an interesting journey. So I'm sure we'll get into some really great stories here today. I want to ask you before we get too far into the depths of it, why are you doing this? This is an idea. It's a pretty big idea. I'm sure there's lots of people in this space that are fighting for attention, and here you are, but yet you've been successful, and yet you're still doing it. So what's the driving factor for you?
What's funny is when I hear that question, I hear, why do you do this to yourself?
Hey, look, I totally relate to that. In fact, I've had my wife multiple times. I come out of the office or I'm working on a project, and you could get that sense of just grit. You got to really figure out a problem. And she says, all of this is self-induced, right? Thanks.
And you go, yeah, I do.
That's right. So why do you do this to yourself?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's entrepreneurship first, the idea second, and it's always been that way, and it will probably continue to be. But Stashbee as a concept is something that has kind of grown and captivated me more with each year. So I always knew I wanted to build something, and what I was looking for a long time is essentially an industry or a use case where there was pain. I think I was naturally drawn to solving pain rather than giving pleasure, if that makes sense. So
yeah, two different problems.
Right. And I'd always been in I guess problem solving jobs. So I was looking for one of those. And secondly, I was looking for something that had like big demographic trends driving it. So if you look at self-storage in the US, you guys have about 17 times more of it than we do.
Wow.
And we're doubling every 5 years. So
right.
this kind of trend of smaller living spaces, increased rent, the dollar or the pound will take you less far. The fact that we're able to accumulate more material stuff, but we've got less place to put it. Mm-hmm. And once I started digging into that, I was like, wow, this is something that's going to grow. And then all these kind of ideas swirling around. I had other concepts too that were less good. And yeah,
You can't have a good one without a bad one right next to it to make the good one look good.
Right, it's like a 1 in 10.
Exactly.
But even this, like all good ideas, most people will tell you that it sucks as an idea because they can't see how it can be done. Neither can you, in fairness, to begin with.
Good.
But no, the tipping point for me starting Stashbee was personal experience. So up until that point, it was an intellectual exercise. And then I went through one of the unexpected life changes. We talk a lot about unexpected life change being the driver for the customer. So I went through a separation of a relationship that I'd been in for 9 years.
Wow.
And overnight, I don't have a place to live, but I do have a lot of things.
Right.
So it's like me, my couch, and the sidewalk.
So yeah, not good.
You go to right. So and we now know that pretty much all usage of this thing is life events, like someone dies, your business is growing too fast, your business suddenly shrinks, It's a breakup, you got a leak, like there's a pipe that breaks or something. So yeah, so it was personal experience, and I ended up leaving my stuff with my neighbor, and that was the light bulb moment. I thought, wait, I left my stuff with my neighbor. Could we do that as a business?
Yeah. How do we monetize this? So there's some people that I've come across that are legacy minded and motivated, and you might still be, but then there's people who are industry disruptors, and then there's like industry creators. And so that's you, my friend. Like here you are, literally inventing something out of nothing. I know that there's some similarities in other spaces, but I mean, we're talking to an inventor, right? And so this is something that you've out of your own experience thought, well, this is something that we can turn into and monetize, which is really cool, because now you have a conviction, right, about why it exists. Would you say that's true, or does that ring through the story as you guys continue to market?
Yeah, I think so. You know, us Brits, we tend towards the self-deprecating. So I don't think I've ever quite elevated myself to inventor, but I'll take it from now on. I'm going to use that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, I think that's the case. What's been super interesting for us, I mean, we can talk about how our original assumptions for how we were helping and how this thing would be valuable were completely wrong. They were directionally right, but a lot of the nuance was wrong.
Sure.
But the interesting thing about market creation is most of the people who use our service are not the people that would have otherwise used the existing incumbents, right? So we used to think, right, well, there's someone would go to a self-storage unit and we're going to give them a cheaper alternative that happens to be someone's garage, or let's say garage for simplicity, or garage, and it's half the price and it's more local. And actually what turned out to be the case is a lot of people who need that kind of space, they don't really use self-storage. Like they have a pickup truck, they have a small handyman DIY bricks and mortar business, maybe they're carpenters. These are people who need to like really use the space. And so it's been interesting for us to see like different kinds of people getting use from us. So yeah, I guess I agree with you. There's a degree of market creation.
Yeah, which is really cool with what you just said. I mean, obviously this all stems from the question of like why, and then we're talking about fulfillment for you and that type of a thing. But even inside of this, some of these subsets of people that are using it, we can dive more into it a little bit later. But for you to be able to say that there are people using my service that probably didn't have a solution before, right? And so then you start to wonder, like, well, what were they doing? I don't know. You're right. And maybe you got research on that, but that's the market creation, the inventor piece that I think is just really cool, because you know, what did we do before iPhone? What did we do before a lot of situations that we think of as normal now, because it's just a better, faster, stronger way to do certain things. And we just either didn't have an option, or it was a myriad of different things that we put together, that we strung together. And so for all intents and purposes, back to the original question here, that's fulfilling to you to do all this? Or is it like, do you have a bigger vision yet still that you're on the way to? What does that look like for you?
Great question. So by the way, I think people were doing the exact same thing. They were renting space from each other, but they just didn't have any of the insurance or the ease of using a website and that kind of stuff. So we took something that they were already doing, we made it a bit better. So yeah, that's absolutely fulfilling for me, because it's real people with real problems and you're making life a little easier. But I think there's like a meta fulfillment that goes above that, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, which is it's kind of three things that the job lets me do. So I love building stuff, and that's like taking stuff apart and putting it back together, right? So for me, it's systems, processes, code, user journeys. But when I was a kid, it was like building things. Yeah, I get to lead, which is an amazing privilege to figure out how the hell to do that every day, because it changes and it forces you to learn and forces humility and all this kind of stuff. And there's something around translation, like how do you, so on one extreme end you have like code, and on the other end you have someone who just needs a garage, or on one end you have an ad, and on the other end you have a system. And so for me, when you combine those three things, the building, the leading, and the translating, honestly, it could be any business idea. It just happens that this one's been a pretty good one. It's kept me busy for the last sort of 6 years. But yeah.
Spoken like a real entrepreneur, I feel like, because I've had several people over the years. My first actual business was a franchise, and where we cut up fruit, make it look like flowers, dip it in chocolate, all kinds of fun stuff. Nice. And I don't even like fruit. I mean, there's a couple kinds I like, but to me, it was just a widget, right? Like, I mean, I do like to give gifts, and so I'm in the gift industry. I still own a couple of those, and so okay, that makes sense. But like, it was me building, leading, translating that service over to the need, just like you just said. And then I've been able to do that in several industries since then, which I think is a really cool part. It doesn't mean that you have to be able to go to that level to be a successful entrepreneur, because I think that you can be like in a little niche, and maybe it's your trade or your skill set that you really, really like, and you like doing that particular thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I just think that there's a different breed of us, like maybe you and I, that just see it as a widget, and then let's just play the game. Let's have fun. Let's play the game. And then maybe when this game ends, we'll come over here and play this game. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I don't think I would have had the self-awareness or the kind of the vocabulary to agree with you.
Sure.
But yeah, that's definitely how I identify now. And if I cast my mind back to earlier in the journey, when I was kind of looking around, saying to my peers at the time, people who weren't entrepreneurs, like, hey, I'm going to go do this. And one of the common objections, and by the way, there's endless objections from anyone who's not you, right? If you want to go find them, you can find more objections.
100%.
And one of the most common ones was, yeah, but how can you be passionate about X, whatever X is? In this situation, it was self-storage and ultimately parking. And at the time, I used to find that really caught me off guard. Like, oh God, what if I'm not passionate? Oh crap, I'm gonna run out of steam in 6 months when I realize that I'm just bored of square footage.
Yeah,
and it's not really, like you say, for a certain type of entrepreneur, that you don't necessarily need that kind of like vertical passion. It's more of a horizontal passion that cuts across anything.
Yeah. Well, the passion is, to your point, it's those three things. Right. I love those three things, because that's the game. Sometimes on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or even individual business, we win or we lose. And that doesn't mean that the game stops. It just means that maybe we have to play another game tomorrow, or play another business game if we exit or one doesn't work. And so I just think it's a different perspective of what the game actually is. And for us, it's just a matter of putting pieces together. It's the architect of culture, whether it's our actual environment or our actual business. All those things kind of roll into themselves. I want to hear a little bit about the journey, though. So you started in 2017. You kind of gave us a little bit about how it kind of came to you as an idea, but tell us just a little bit of the story over the last 6 years. Can you give us the running highlights, if you will?
Sure. Yeah. The condensed roller coaster.
That's right. That's right.
Every entrepreneur says that. It's so true. It's a cliche because it's true. Right. So yeah, we actually, in fairness, we started in 16, second half of 16. Myself and my co-founder David, we met on this entrepreneurship course, which is essentially a bunch of busy people working full-time jobs in the city going, I really want to do my own thing. Someone please push me over the edge. And then we found each other. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we did. Because he had a similar concept to me, and we doing our little pitches. And like 6 weeks later, we had quit our job and we were working out of my bedroom.
Wow.
We were just like so primed for it.
That's right.
We were sort of both 7-8 years into our careers as management consultants, and it was time. So we started working together, and it was that first phase was very DIY. We had a personal runway, like money to live for sort of 12-18 months, but we didn't really have cash to start hiring people. Right. We didn't have an investor network, anything like that. So, and neither of us are developers. So we just use kind of off the shelf stuff, drag and drop tools. There's so much tooling out there, and I dipped back into it again recently, and it's like you can do anything you can dream of essentially without writing code. And so we built the first version of this thing. It was like landing pages with spreadsheets, so it looked like you were matching with someone, but it was just like us with phones and post-its being like, hey, do you want storage? Yeah, I've got some storage.
Right.
Yeah. Painful. The first CRM was like post-its on the wall, just like moving stuff down the funnel, and then if the wind came, the post-its would like fall off the wall. Where's that booking going? And then kind of we stuck at that for a while, and we got some press, and we couldn't capture most of what came through the door, and that was enough kind of momentum for us to raise some money. And we used the money to hire our initial team and turn that kind of Frankenstein thing into a platform that could actually do some of the stuff we said it would do. And that was like 17, 18. And then 18, 19 was us figuring out how to grow it, because we got demand and supply side. And we eventually learned that it's a supply constrained business. It's harder to get hold of the right space and the right people who behave in the right way than it is to get the people who want to buy it. Interesting. And then we went into COVID, and it was, at least here in the UK, we were very strict with our lockdowns. We had almost 2 years of super interrupted business and life in general. And this thing that we facilitate, which is people physically going to see things and do things in person, I was super disrupted. But more importantly, and we can dive into this a bit more, the way we'd set up our acquisition channels were not resilient to what happened during COVID. So it became 5-10 times more expensive to get customers. Wow. So super bumpy through that whole time. We had 2-3 rounds of layoffs. In fact, we had a layoff round, and then we hired some more, and then we had to lay off again. So it's very sort of up and down, trying to figure out how to get the growth curve to start working again. And then coming into 2022, we have this amazing platform, everything's super automated, and we would just getting to the point where we needed to raise more money, and what the market's been like in 22. So we couldn't. So after all that, we sort of were starting to show growth, and then we ran out of cash. So then we had another big moment where we essentially said, hey, we're gonna abandon any kind of external funding. We're gonna really cut costs, and we're gonna become a profitable business. And we hit gross profitability towards the back end of last year, and we're on our way to net. So wow, thank you. Yeah, and obviously I've skipped over a bunch of stuff there, but
yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, that gives you a sense of the ups and the downs.
Yeah, I just think, for the listener, there's so many things there, and even if they're driving in their vehicle right now, listening or working out or whatever, my point is, even if they're not taking notes, listening to that, especially from an inception of absolutely nothing to raising money, hiring a team, as you said, which was probably a pretty big deal, especially if you raise money and then you put a team together. That probably wasn't just a few people that are off the street. That was probably a pretty professional crew. And then to run into one of probably the biggest disruption that you'll ever experience, and then figure out how to navigate that while in the midst of all these other very high risk things that you had just stepped into, is not only encouraging, but it's like, Wow, congrats. And then for you to dial it down and to become profitable. So my kind of like my follow-up question and all that for someone who's listening right now, who is in that same place. Maybe they've had growth, maybe they're trying to grow. Is profitability important throughout all of that? Or is there like a certain tipping point that you kind of have to recognize and go, okay, enough is enough. Now we got to dial in the numbers. Like, what does that look like for maybe the listener?
Good question. Well, I can tell you that my views on this have changed through the journey.
Okay.
So I'll kind of answer where I spent most of my time in Stashbee with my mindset on this, and then where it is today. So for most of the time, they talk about good times create soft men, that whole quote.
Right.
So I just caught the tail end of the 2008 crash at the very beginning of my career. So I wasn't plugged in to the market as such.
Right. Yep.
So I never really understood how markets and market sentiment impacts investment, which impacts how money flows into organizations, which impacts ultimately how much cash someone like me can raise and at what valuation, what that means. So for most of the journey, I had an assumption reinforced by, obviously, you surround yourself with people that reinforce the thing that you want to hear almost. And it was as follows. We're a marketplace business. They cost lots of money to get off the ground. Every other big one that, has ever been successful lost money hand over fist for many years. And because the growth was so exciting, investors kept plowing cash in, and one day there'll be a big payoff. That is the way. So the first thing I say to everyone listening is that I don't think there is one way. And I think if anyone tells you this is the way, then maybe like look at them slightly cautiously, because there's no one single way.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
Yeah. And then I think what the last sort of 2 years have taught me is that markets are sentiment driven. And if you have built your business in a way which is dependent on markets, then effectively you've built your business in a way that relies on other people's emotions. Which is, when you put it like that, is sort of pretty risky. And I get it. Some businesses, it's a little scary, right? But all the big success stories that raise billions of dollars and go to the moon, like, yes, that is one route. But I think for most entrepreneurs, statistically, that's not the route that's going to happen. It's you're much more likely to succeed if from day one you're checking how much money in and how much money out, and you take calculated risk, and you have profitability in your mind's eye from the beginning. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but for me, there's like two very distinct narratives.
Yeah. Well, I think that not only are you right, I agree with you, but I think that the listener, whether they've tried to raise money or whether they're bootstrapping, as maybe we would call it, I think that both can work is the point. Yeah. And inside of those are different strategies. I loved what you said about there's not one way. And I guess I've never really said this out loud as far as like the way that you communicated that, but I absolutely agree with that. And I would even say inside of our mastermind group, the way that I lead facilitation or bring discussion around certain things, it's not that myself or any other one person has the answer, but that the collective, right? So like when you bring an issue, or when you bring hey, here's where we're looking to go, or maybe a new plan or something like that in front of kings, you're going to get a lot of different opinions. And some of the ability that you have or need as a business owner or as a king, as using our language, is to be able to disseminate and go, okay, well, I like that. I don't like that. Why do I like that? Why do I not like that? Maybe that's what I needed to hear. I don't really like it, but I need to do it. Or what's the variation that I'm hearing here? Or is there a collective agreement? And then maybe do I agree with it? Do I not agree with it? How do I apply that? Like, there's so many peer-to-peer nuances that can go into a discussion when you have an open mind and when you have the ability to either listen and take advice, or be able to say, you know what, that's not for me. And either one is okay, because at the end of the day, we're going to do what we want to do anyway, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that is exactly all those things you mentioned. To me, they're dualities that can exist at the same time. Yeah. So you can be both receptive to ideas and decisive and stand on your own 2 feet at the same time. It's not like you pick one track or the other. The other one I talk about a lot, right? At least I think about a lot, is this idea of divergent and convergent thinking, right? Divergent is like you come to me and I'm like throwing ideas out, and I suppose if you were to approach me with a convergent mindset, which like I need the one answer and I need it by 2 p.m., then I'm going to annoy the crap out of you by like throwing ideas at you and vice versa. But right. I think the nuance there is that you can be both at the same time. Even in the same sentence, you can be both convergent and divergent. So which is why doing groups like the one you just mentioned can be so powerful if everyone approaches it in the right way.
Yeah. Well, I even think to using your point there, I haven't maybe necessarily thought about this in the way that you just said it, but there's probably even different times, seasons of the business, or even different problems inside of the business where you're going to use one or maybe even both of these ways of thinking, because there are problems, and I can say, okay, I have a problem with my marketing funnel. I'm not getting clicks. Well, it could be a couple of different things, but for the most part, it's going to be like this or that. Like, it's not going to be this super conceptual and try this and try that and try this and try that. Although there can be ideas inside of the creative, the problem is the creative or whatever the actual problem is. And so I think that even recognizing that is like, okay, is this a problem that I need a divergent or a convergent into, or a way of thinking to be able to get the solution? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And sometimes what you can do is, even just taking your example, is it's almost like, if this is the problem, I'm holding up my left hand if anyone can't see, you can attack it from one side with the divergent thinking, and almost like in the second half of the meeting, let's say if you're doing a group meeting, right, you can almost set an alarm and say, right, for the next 25 minutes, we're going to throw everything at the wall. We're going to be divergent. And then the alarm goes off and it's right. Okay, guys, we've done our diverging. We've got all our ideas out. Spaghetti is literally and metaphorically on the wall. Now we're going to be convergent. We're going to talk about execution. We're going to talk about constraints. We're going to talk about deadlines. And that for me, I found is like, even if someone is stuck in their own minds, I find if you just sit with yourself in a notepad for 5 minutes and you split it half, divergent, convergent, you can break through a lot of stuff just by making sure you flip your brain between those two. Yeah,
it's huge. I hope the listeners paying attention, because we're talking about some pretty impactful stuff here. Stuff that you and I will use for decades and decades in business. Stuff that won't go away, that's for sure. Inside of this, we've heard some decisions that you've made, maybe some good decisions around like transitioning towards profitability. What would you say was a bad decision in the last 6 years?
Yeah, obviously the philosophical Zen one is, they're all good because you learn from them, but there's definitely bad ones.
Oh yeah.
I would say probably the most impactful one in terms of the negative impact that it subsequently had was the decision to put our entire sort of growth ethos and strategy, and I use both those words, another duality, interchangeably, right? Because one's kind of philosophical, the other one's more practical, but it was both a way of thinking and how we executed on paid media. And it was arguably through lack of knowing a different way. We knew more about paying for ads on Google and Facebook than we did about long-term search engine optimization or figuring out ways to build up an organic following. Right. And I would say there was a degree of impatience. So like if I take $100 or even $1,000 and I go onto Google Ad Console and I put in some words, I can press a button and I can have a customer tomorrow. It's like instant dopamine hit.
Right.
It's addictive, like dopamine, right? What's not as satisfactory is to go, okay, hang on a second. Let's think about posting a blog every day with specific keywords, and we won't be able to see the results for 6 months.
And even if you do get them, you don't know exactly that it came from that blog post.
Exactly. So I think the most impactful negative decision, because really that's what caused a lot of pain later on when we were shaken by macro events, was that we were 80-90% reliant on spending on platforms like Google and Facebook.
The quick hit. What should the ratio be if the listener is going, well, geez, maybe I'm pretty heavy on lead generation or paying for leads? Or
again, I don't think there's a one size fits all, and there's different phases for different businesses. But what I would say is, don't just assume that because you can pay to get a customer through one of these platforms, it's necessarily the right thing for you. I think in terms of sort of trajectory or direction, and so for me, if your business is predominantly paid media, I would strongly encourage you to think about, how do I trend this towards relying on it less? So different businesses, different speeds.
Great mindset though.
Fossil fuel versus renewable, right? It's like,
right.
Yeah, you want to get off one and onto the other one.
Yeah. But the one makes you go faster right now. So it's difficult to see how you can transition or why you would want to transition. Conceptually, it makes sense, but you're like, I don't know. I kind of like going this fast.
Yeah. And what I would, just to make it more concrete, is just to give people a sense, the cost of getting a client through our paid channels, when COVID hit, it went up by 5 times. So it went from just about costing in to us losing like 80 cents on the dollar for every customer. And because we were loss making, it was like disastrous. So these things can happen.
Yeah. And I don't think that we're all planning for another COVID or that type of macro event. However, the reality of it is that things can happen immediately. And what you're referring to is the difference between lead generation and branding, basically. And if you just lead generate only, you really don't have much of a brand. You think you do, maybe. But if people aren't finding you organically, to your point, or naturally just how they go about their thing online, whether it be through SEO or keywords or a podcast, whatever, people need to be able to find you and know what you stand for without necessarily seeing an ad. And of course, there's power behind paid media for sure. I think that all businesses, in order to get to a certain point, have to have it. But there's lots of different options in that. Thank you for the description there. I want to be able to give you a chance to answer some of our speed round questions too, because we've gotten so deep on some of the other things. I think the listeners they've gotten kind of a 2x value here on this show. But in the speed round, I want to go over what I call KPIs. And I want to know if you can only track one thing inside of this space business that you have, what would it be? I'm
going to go, and this is because there are so many, I'm going to go with something maybe a little left field, which is the number of actions that you committed to within a certain time frame that you completed. So very, very simple example is, I've decided that over the course of the next 4 weeks, let's use an organic growth thing, right? 1 blog post will be posted every single day. So that's 20 over the next 4 weeks. The only KPI that matters is, did it get done every day? So it's a 1 or a 0, right? Super binary. And why do I say that? I think everyone listening, anyone who starts a business, super smart. We're able to consume, understand, and analyze so many different forms of data. It can become data soup. And what can sometimes happen is it takes you away from just doing stuff. Right. And so if it was 1, it would just be like, okay, what was your hit rate over the last 4 weeks? 100% done, 70% done, 20% done. Right. So that'd be mine. Yeah. I love from the perspective of someone who already mentioned how they took a business that was basically about to implode all the way back down the hill to profitability, and how this was still your answer, which is long game. That's what I heard from you. Play the long game, play the long game, play the long game. Today, yes, we need money. We have to be a good business. We have to be a good steward. That's one of our core values as a royal steward. We have to take good care of what we have. We have to be profitable. Fine, I get it. But man, play the long game. Are we doing this to just have something, a hobby this year? Or are we building a brand? Are we building a business, a sustainable thing
that's going to be around for a while, or maybe even into generations, or maybe an exit, whatever the plan is. And so it's like the long game can look slow and scary, is what I just heard you say. But it's binary, and you just do it, right? Like, just do another show, Chaz. Just do another show. I know nobody knows what Gathering the Kings is. You just started the Mastermind group. This was obviously over a year ago, but you just started the Mastermind group, and you've got 8, 9, 10, 7-figure, 8-figure members. And now you're going to start a podcast. Nobody knows what you're doing, what the deal is. Why are you doing this? You're not going to go for sponsorships. You're not going to get paid on the podcast. You just want to help people. Why would you do that? Right? 250 episodes later, we're in, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 different countries being listened to, thousands and thousands of downloads. And I get to interview cool people like you. Like, I had no idea. You just do another show. Just do another show. Did I do my shows this week? Did I have a good time with my people? Did we follow up? Did we create value? Did we send them something? Did we like, just keep doing it?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds so simple, but the wisdom of it is taken years to kind of come back and hit me in the face again. But when someone says, well, how do I get thousands of listeners? How do I get to all these countries? And wow, how the rollout plan is going to be super complex. And the answer was just make 250 episodes. Just do one every few days, and then another, and you know that lots of them are going to suck, and like some of them are going to go wrong, and you're going to record one, and then afterwards in the edit you're going to realize that half the sound was missing. But you just keep making them, right?
Been there 100%. Right. So if the listener's paying close attention to both of us, it's put your head down, not so far down to where you can't make adjustments and pivots, but put it down, do the right things that matter for the long game. Of course, there's going to be some bumps in the road that we got to take care of on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but put your head down for the long game. I think even as young entrepreneurs, that's even more important, because we're super impatient, like you talked about earlier. And it's like, look, what am I really trying to do here? Am I trying to just get rich, or am I really trying to build a business, right? Builders don't get rich. Yeah, that's inevitable, right? We're building a big old thing, a big old kingdom, right? What book would you recommend, Anthony, for a business owner trying to grow?
I'm going to stick with the theme, and people can read this in like under an hour. It's called Do the Work by Stephen Pressfield.
Love it.
Big font, very direct. It's like having someone slap you in the face and say, why the hell are you still talking about this and not doing it?
Why are you still reading this book?
Yeah, exactly. Precisely.
Close the chapter. Get to it.
Just get to it. Yeah. And what I like about the book is it makes you realize that you're not the only one who has these self-defeating voices. It personifies resistance. It says it has a name. It's a thing. It's working against you. This procrastination thing is actively. So you have to actively meet it, and know you don't ever kill it. Like it's like a lifelong adversary. And yeah, I like that book so much that I gave everyone in my team a copy. And I think they all rolled their eyes to begin with, but then I catch them quoting from it. So yeah, it's a good read.
That's right. First off, we'll put the show notes. We'll put the link to the book in the show notes. I hope the listener grabs it. But what you just said there at the end is that even through a book, you've created tribal language, right? Inside of your tribe, you've given them mindset through a book that you didn't even write, but now it's become cultural language inside of your group, which I think is just, I don't want the listener to miss that. You just said it so like swiftly and quietly in there. But that's how you build not only a business, but the team or the culture inside of it, is that you create a camaraderie around belief, around the same actions, and even the same language. And so the fact that his team is quoting this book is a big deal. Not movies, but from a book. Wow. It's incredible. Super inspiring. What do you think about intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. I would say that it can also be a distraction depending on who you're spending time with. So that
very good.
I have this framework for thinking about relationships, which perhaps can sound a little bit cold and calculating, but I hold to it, which is every single relationship is transactional on some level. Even your closest friend, there is something that they get from you and something that you get from them. That's right. And obviously in the business world, it's more so, or more overtly so. And I think all I would say is I've tried to be deliberate about when I'm seeking out advice and connection, to be really clear about what it is I'm looking for and why, because on the receiving end of it, the thing that can feel draining is people who they haven't actually taken the time to think about what the question even is, or do a Google search, or just cover the basics. And then whoever it is that you want to reach out to network or to create some kind of, relationship, I think just being deliberate and clear, and you can't really go wrong. That would be my biggest point. And I say that, by the way, having been guilty of doing the same myself, reaching out to people, being like, I just want to pick your brain. And then they're like, why? You're like, just cause. It's super annoying. So you're right. I mean, there's intentionality is what I'm hearing you say, knowing what you need, and the need can even be you have a desire to give, right? Like, because you have a desire to give, we're on a show today. I have a desire to give. So in our desires to give, we're talking about the cool things that we've been able to do and fumble on, so that someone else can be able to get a good benefit. And so it doesn't always have to be self-serving, to your point. It just needs to be intentional. And I think that out of the intentionality becomes, not only is it fulfilling for the person doing it, but what you're saying is like, now you're actually serving the other person also. It's not just annoying to them. I like to say it like this, that every relationship has a cost. Some just don't give a return. Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, you're right. You said it's transactional. Yeah. Does my best friend really cost me money? Well, depending upon what type of return,
it could be.
It could
certainly
be
time
from a lot of really great things because he or she's super negative, or maybe it's the complete opposite. Maybe they're pouring into you. I don't know, but they all cost for sure. Time, money, effort, resource, energy units, the whole deal, right?
Yeah, big time.
I got one last question here for you, Anthony.
Shoot.
If you could whisper in the younger Anthony's ear, what would you say?
I would probably say keep listening to the inner voice, the one that says this job isn't quite right. Maybe I should go do something else. Or this advice I'm getting, it's not sitting well with me. I should critique it. Or even the inner voice that says this whole thing that everyone does where they get up and go to the office every day and they have a paycheck. That's not quite working for me either. The questioning voice, what I would say to him is keep listening to it, keep feeding it. It's not a bad thing. And I'm sure lots of people can relate to this, but from a very young age, it was like, why have you got to be so intense? Why have you got to take so many risks? Why have you got to question everything? Jesus, can you just slow down?
Calm down, Anthony.
Right, calm down. And what I would say to younger me is don't.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
I not only relate, but I feel that deep in my soul, man. And I think almost everybody listening to a degree feels that way, because otherwise they wouldn't be listening to a show like this. They wouldn't be 45 minutes into a recording listening to crazy guys like you and me talk about how our roller coaster has been at moments, at times where I, maybe peed my pants a little bit, but other times where I was on top of the mountain. And
sometimes in the same day.
The up and down is real. You've been incredible. You've been authentic. And your story has, I'm sure, inspired many here today. And so thank you for giving that to us. How can the listener find you? Of course, if they're in the UK and they need space or they need parking, how can they find you? Number one, but then number two, for all the entrepreneurs out there, how can they come, not pick your brain, but be intentional with a question, maybe?
Yeah, big time. So yeah, if you are in the UK and you need storage or parking, it's stashbee.com, stashbee.com. And if it's more get in touch with me or talk about entrepreneurship or anything like that, then I have another website, which is called founderjumpstart.com, Founder Jumpstart. And that's where I talk about all of this stuff to do with mindset, early stage barriers. I tell a lot of stories. I do a lot of cartoons to tell the stories. And I do a newsletter every week where I talk about a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today. So if you want to sign up to that, then founderjumpstart.com.
Yeah. And he was super humble with that, but this is actually something that he's pouring into. He's providing a space here for entrepreneurs to be able to kind of press in, especially in the earlier stages, or even if they haven't jumped into entrepreneurship yet. And so if that's you, possibly don't skip over how humble Anthony was there, but definitely check out that website. We'll put it in the links for you as well. But he's creating space for entrepreneurs, just like this podcast, out of sheer grit and will. I mean, this is what we do. It's king mindset to be able to take what we've got and give it to somebody else. And so don't be silly. Take him up on it. Anthony, you've been incredible. Thank you for being here. Blessings on your family and your team and everywhere that Stashbee is going. You've been incredible. Thank you for being here.
Likewise, Chaz, and to everyone listening as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing literally over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings literally exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.